What's going on, fellow fixers? I'm Jeremy Schick and I'm a fixer. In today's video we are going to be laying down laminate flooring. So this is a project that I've been meaning to do for a while. Some of you know that my wife is having a baby in about, it could be any day now, but the nursery has this old shag carpet and we've had it for actually since I built the house in 2007. This carpet has been in here. So it's already been through one baby and we didn't want it to go through another baby. So I had about 180 square feet of laminate left over from a shed conversion, shed to office conversion. And so I wasn't sure what I was going to do with it, and finally decided I'm just going to go ahead and put it in the nursery. So today we're going to get the rest of this furniture out of here. I'm going to pull the carpet back. We got a vapor barrier to put down. Then we're going to put down the laminate, and then I have some shoe mold as well that's going to go down. I don't know if I'll get to the shoe mold today. Haven't painted it yet, so probably not. But we're at least going to get the laminate down. So thanks so much for watching, and let's get to it. Alright, I've got everything out of the nursery. It's time to pull up the carpet. So this is where the rubber meets the road. Once I do this, there's no going back. So let's get to it. Okay, the carpet and the pad is up. Now what I'm going to do is go around and take out all the little tack strips that go around the edge of the room. You want to make sure you get all the tack strips up and also all of the nails that are in there. Then we're going to sweep it all and clean it up. Alright, so I have the pad up, and I'm sorry for the audio. I'm sure it's very echoey now, but I'm in a concrete room. What am I going to do? So, I've got the carpet up, I've got the pad up, I've got all of those carpet tack strips around the outside edge up. I've swept everything, I've cleaned it. So the next piece is that I'm going to put down the vapor barrier, and I'll show you what that is. The vapor barrier is essentially just a piece of foam, thin foam. And all it does is that concrete is not waterproof, so moisture will come up from the ground up. And so what this does is this basically blocks that from coming up into your laminate flooring. So I'm going to put this down, and this is just a scrap piece, but the actual rolls of it have some adhesive, and you can join these together. And if you need to add little pieces like this, then just use duct tape and join those pieces together that way. So that's what we're going to do. This is what I'm putting down. 2-in-1 underlayment, Blue Hawk. I got that at Lowe's, but I'm sure you could get it anywhere. So it's a good idea before you even get started to measure the width of your room. You want to measure it, and then you want to divide that length by the width of your board. So in this case, the width of this room is 107.25 inches, and the boards are 7.5 inches wide. So whenever I divide that, there's a percentage. It was like 14.3, I think. That means there's going to be 14 full width boards and then 3/10 of a board. So then I take 7.5 inches, multiply that by 0.3, and it's going to be about 2.5 inches, so about that wide, which is fine. What you want to do is you don't want it to be like 1/4 of an inch or something. If you get down that low, then you're going to have problems, and if that's the case, then what you want to do is cut down your starter board, cut it down like in half or so. That way you know that by the time you get to the end, you're going to have about 1/2 a board left over. So before you ever get started, that's what you want to do, just to make sure that you don't get to the other side and you just have basically a little sliver and have no way to cut that out. Okay, so now the fun begins. I have all the foam down. It's all taped and sealed together, and now it's time to start laying. Now what I want to do, I'll show you here. Because I had this flooring already used, I have some leftover pieces from before. And generally how you want to do this is you want the big lip this way, and you usually want to do thirds. So you obviously don't want your seams to be right next to each other. It doesn't look right and it doesn't make for a good seal, or I'm sorry, a good seam. So generally what you're going to do is start with the full one and then go with one that's cut down a third, and then go with one that's cut down a third again. And what that ends up doing is creating a nice look, and you can stagger those as you go out. I'll probably cut a little bit more off of this one. That's what we're going to do. So I'm going to start in the closet, and I'm going to go out this way and just bring my rows just like that. Okay, so this is actually going to work out pretty good because I can basically, the depth of this right here is the full width of a piece of board. So rather than having to notch this board so that it'll slide in, I can actually just use a full piece here, and then I'll use a full piece on the back side of this door, and then these two pieces will actually just join together as one piece all the way across. It'll work out very well. So because of that, this is actually too small. I'm going to see if I have any scrap pieces that are about that right size. Okay, so this is the closest that I had, and it's going to go like that. And so the way that I mark it is I flip it upside down and backwards, and then I can mark how I want it to go. It doesn't matter, I'm going to put shoe mold on anyway, but I want it to go sort of underneath the baseboard a little bit, so I can mark that. So now that I have this piece on, go ahead and slide it in here, just like so. The other thing to keep in mind is this is floating flooring, so you don't want a tight fit. You want it to have some gaps on either side, because as it picks up moisture and lets go of moisture from humidity, it's going to sort of float on top of this foam. And so you just want to be able to let it float a little bit. Probably easiest way to do this is just to go ahead and snap these two together, like so. These have to go together. Now, You just slide it on back. There you go. The other thing is, I'm not sure if I mentioned it or not, but I am going to be putting shoe mold all the way around the outside edge, so I don't have to have a real close gap to the baseboard, because I do have some shoe mold that will cover that, that edge. So that's it. I'm going to go ahead and start putting some boards in. The other thing is that you never want to operate out of just one box, because there can be some variations in coloring between your different boxes, and so by pulling out of different boxes you sort of minimize that look. For instance, if this one box was just a little bit lighter color and you put them all together, whole box together, maybe 3 or 4 rows, then it would be obvious laid out next to the rest of the rows. But if you take your flooring and you split it up amongst boxes, if you have one box that is lighter color, well then it just sort of blends in because it's staggered throughout, and it just it works out, it sort of blends in and you don't notice it as much. So that's a tip. Don't operate out of one box, at least 3, maybe 4. Alright, I got a tip for you. I'm going to show you here in a second. I've got a board that needs to go sort of underneath this door trim, but not real deep under it. And so there's no way to put it in and then put it flat. So I'm going to show you a trick that you can snap it in and then slide it all the way down. Alright, so what I did is I just got a piece of scrap wood, and I've got these 2 sides on it so that I can use it to put in without actually breaking off the grooves. So all I did was snap it down, and then I'm just going to knock it where it needs to go. And it's in that channel, so it's just going to slide all the way down. That's it. Now I'm going to cut the piece back here in the closet. Alright, for this board, I've cut it to the right size. But I need to cut down the length. Ideally you have a table saw for this, but I don't have a table saw, so I'm going to have to do it with a jigsaw. Alright, so it looks like I'm a little bit not square in this closet, so because of that I'm going to go upside down. There we go. So I'm just going to connect that line, join these 2 dots, and then I'm going to cut out that line. Alright, there we go. Alright, the rest of this is actually relatively easy. All I have now is just the rectangle out to the door. There's no more closet to deal with. It's just a matter of going all the way down. It'll be sort of a pain once I get to the end down here. So once I get down here, I'm going to have to cut part of a board all the way down to, it's going to be about 2.5 inch. Okay, now I will tell you, these things are pretty straightforward to snap in. Obviously you're going to have the lip going either left or right, it doesn't really matter, but once you get going one direction you have to stay in that direction. And you basically, you have to lift it up at an angle, slide it into the groove, and then lay it down flush, and that locks it in. Some people will do multiple rows at a time, so they may go put this row in, and then cut it down a third, put the next row in, and then put your last piece in. They think that they go faster that way. I'm not a fan. The reason why, I'll show you in just a minute. I do mine one row at a time, and it makes it easier. If you try to do it with 3 rows out or even 2 rows out, the way that you get the next one in here, I'll show you, or at least the way that I get the next one in, is that I put in this groove, just like so, and then I lift up the one I just put in, as well as this one, get the right angle, and then I get that one in. If I had 2 more stacked on this side, there's no way that I'd be able to lift this up as much as I did. Okay, so whenever you do it this way, you just have to make sure that when you lift up the one that you had just put down, make sure that your seams don't come apart going back. If they do, then you obviously have to go back and just make sure they're tapped in tight, which is easy to do. I just find it a whole lot easier to do it that way than to try to have 2 or 3 rows out there, and it just ends up being a mess. You end up having to use a block like this, or buy one of those blocks so that you're hammering it in to get those joints tight, and it's more work than it needs to be. Now you're going to go up and down a lot more, because once you get to the row you're going to have to cut one piece, but you're going to be up and down anyway cutting, so it just is what it is. Let me go ahead and keep on going. Okay, so to do the transition piece between the tile and the new floor, you have to use this, and it basically has a little metal bracket that I'll drill it to the concrete, and then this piece, which is essentially that right there, will just snap into it and will basically make a good clean edge between the tile and the hardwood. Now, if you go to Lowe's and buy this, or Home Depot, you're going to pay about 50 bucks for a little piece. See that right there? I paid $5 for this. I went to Habitat for Humanity just to check it out, and they had an entire bin of different colors and different styles. So this isn't exactly a perfect match, but it's pretty daggum close, and to save 45 bucks, it's worth it. So that's what I'm going to do. Alright, this is the last piece of the puzzle, and the way that I'm going to get this in, I'm actually going to put it in like this. I might have to trim off a little bit of this end, just a hair, but I'm going to put it in like this, and then I'm going to use a pry bar on this side to snap it in here. Now, I already trimmed off just a little bit on this lip just to sort of help that happen. And I've also put a wedge on the other end, because when I start putting force on that, it's going to want to try to push all of those boards in that row down. So I put a wedge in on that side so that it can't go that direction. So let's see what happens. Alright, it's all done. Project's complete. I started about 9:30. It's 2:45, so I worked through lunch. I'm gonna go get something to eat, and then I'll be able to put this trim piece on. In fact, I might do that before I go eat, and it just snaps right on. Should be good to go. So let's see if I can get that on, and then I'll go eat and then clean up after the fact. Alright fellow fixers, it has been a long day. It's about 7 o'clock now in the evening. I started this morning at 9:30, stopped for lunch, but the room is done. I've got the floor all in. I even painted the shoe mold and put the shoe mold in. So here's a little look at the room. Well, it came out good. I obviously need to sweep, but I'm probably going to come back and just touch up the baseboard.